little notepad file.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, I guess we'll just go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Ardent. I am the one hosting this podcast today. Today we're going to be talking about tanks as kind of part of our, I guess this is the fourth episode. Yeah, I think this is the fourth episode.
Yes.
It's the fourth
Our
episode of
ongoing series.
our ongoing Endwalker speculation kind of a series. We're talking about changes that we've seen from the media tour heading into Endwalker, which is now delayed by 2 weeks, which is what we found out yesterday. So I didn't need to rush out extra podcasts before the expansion because they're delayed. But we already set stuff in schedule. Cannot go back, unfortunately. So yeah, here we are. My name is Ardent. I main Sage, but a long time ago, back when I was a wee sprout, I actually made Paladin, and I've played a fair bit of that and Gunbreaker this X pack. That makes me 100% qualified to talk about tanks today.
I mean, in
Trust me,
fairness,
I'm a
Paladin
doctor.
and Endwalker is going to play a lot like Sage. You get healing on every single GCD, as
Yeah,
I understand it.
yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I guess we're gonna talk. I mean, we could talk about our second favorite color. But I also want to hear what your favorite flavor of jelly bean is. Um, Currently mine is the blue one.
It's not a flavor.
Yes, yes, it is. It tastes
In
blue.
in this dystopian world we live in this corporate culture that we've been forced to swallow, blue is a flavor.
Yes,
Get
Uh,
over it.
and
Fuck jelly
mayonnaise
beans.
is savory pudding. So
That's a bridge too far,
it's not.
even for you.
It's not. You've known me. It's not.
I have.
Anyways, so why don't we go ahead and move on to the next person? I'm not gonna, we're not gonna go in any specific order, except I'm just gonna tell Brad to go next.
Dealer's choice then. Hello, I'm Brad. I don't main Sage. I occasionally play Warrior when fucking the bottle spins around and someone has to be tank, which preeminently qualifies me to talk about the changes coming not only to Warrior, but all 4 tanks in Endwalker. And my favorite jelly bean is probably the toasted marshmallow one.
Toasted.
I think I could probably eat those for an entire day and then become hideously sick and never do it again. And then do it again a week later. So that's a little bit about me. Do I get to decide who goes next?
Sure.
I pick Arden.
Okay, cool. And then I bypass that and tell Aemide to go next.
No.
Hey, I'm Aemide. I am a paladin main. I've been a paladin main since I started playing because I hate myself, and I thought pressing Savage Blade 80 gazillion times in a fight was fun. I
And
got
you've
into
never been
raiding-
proven wrong.
I know, right? I've got into raiding in Stormblood, kind of semi-casually, and then a little bit more hardcore. Oh, hardcore in air quotes, in Shadowbringers. I'm good, but I'm not amazing. I have some purples. I have a few oranges here and there. I have some pinks on the easy fights, aka extreme trials, but I'm not like an end
These
all
are
be
your
all
jelly
player.
bean colors you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I am going to ignore that. And I am also probably the most qualified person here when it comes to tanks, which isn't saying much, but there it is.
Yeah. But we also need your second favorite color and your favorite flavor of jelly bean.
My
Your social
favorite,
security number.
my favorite flavor of jelly bean is fuck jelly beans,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and my
now
second
to
favorite
make-
color is fuck colors.
But you're already fucking jelly beans, so you're gonna have to pick one.
No, I'm polyamorous.
Mhm. The jelly beans aren't though.
Oh, well, I guess they're getting dropped off at the curb then.
Mm. Okay. Sounds good. So, anyways, as we've been kind of doing with all of our with everything throughout the series, let's go ahead and just move right into general tank changes and we should expect to see from in terms of like what might be different for all tanks instead of before we dive into like each individual one.
Healing, 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 healing. With an exception that we'll get to later that everyone already knows about if they've been paying attention.
Yeah, but whoever said they were paying attention. But
Um,
you are absolutely correct. The amount of party sustain, self-sustain, just the ability to make green numbers happen appears to have just been
Hey,
slathered over the
Sparkles.
tanks in
Good to see
Shadowbringer,
you.
or
How you
in
doing?
Endwalker, rather.
um, and I will also, I'd like to point out that I think something worth mentioning is not something that's changing, but something that's staying the same. I think all of the tanks have a very, very similar playstyle, and to the point that in some cases you could like delete the new buttons and you wouldn't even notice. And that's not
Thanks for the
necessarily a
lurk,
bad
Nox.
thing. I think the tanks all play fairly well right now in Shadowbringers. Um, but it does kind of play into some specific complaints that I have that we'll get to later as we go through each tank in turn. I think that uh, they really didn't know what to change about tanks since they just kind of kept everything the same as far as their damage abilities goes.
Ooh, night shift. Okay, well,
It
hope you have a
there
good day
is
at work.
definitely I get a similar feeling that I did with the healers, honestly, going into Endwalker, where it felt very much like they had one, maybe two ideas about what they wanted the role to have at 90, and just sort of layered that template over everyone. Basically saying, all right, every healer gets one, tank type mitigation. They're all going to get it at the exact same level. That's something. Move on from there. Upgrade their DPS spells with new animations. That doesn't require any particular thought. It's just animation work. Uh, the tanks feel kind of similar, and I'm wondering if that's a consequence of you talk about things that aren't changing. They aren't reverting anything that they did to aggro going into
Which makes me really
Shadowbringers.
sad, honestly.
Um, and if you're complaining about or worried about tanks not having enough opportunities to differentiate themselves, I feel like that's a big one. That's a big hole in their sort of design that has yet to be filled, in my opinion.
Yep. um, kind of going off of my experience with like tanking from Stormblood to Shadowbringers. Um, that was I think what I felt like kind of got me the most jaded from tanking. Is just aggro management. Like aggro used to be a resource that you cared about, um, specifically because when tanks had stances, specifically a DPS stance and a tank stance, um, the trade-off was that if you were in tank stance, you dealt less damage. If you were in your damage stance, you gained less aggro. And so, like part of what made good tanks good is that like you would dance between your, you would try and stay in your damage stance as often as possible, while minimizing the time that you were in your less
Here's
damaging stance.
here's why I'm okay with the fact that it's removed. It wasn't difficult. Like
Well,
it
well,
was
I
not
mean,
it
I
was
did.
not an expression it was not an expression of player skill. It was very easy
Well,
to be in the correct stance, which 98% of the time was your damage stance. And it was a hassle more than
well,
it was engaging gameplay to me.
well. I
Okay.
mean, for me, it was a lot more like looking at it from. It felt more like a party-wide responsibility to take care of the aggro generation, especially when it came to like staying in a fight for long enough, right? You only had so many tools as a DPS to mitigate the amount of hate that you were getting, the amount that you could like potentially pull off the tank. Um, so if you were a good DPS, like not only were you executing your rotation well, but you were also like popping skills to reduce your aggro generation, just like overall. And so good DPS also meant that tanks had an easier job. Um, you know, but I understand why it changed, and I understand how much better the game is now because of it. But it was just like an extra layer that kind of got taken off and made tanks feel more like DPS with tank cooldowns more so than like tanks that had
That's,
to
I
like
mean,
worry
that's,
about like the resource, like
I
aggro
think,
as a resource.
I think that's a fair point. It's a fair take.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's an opinion take, and my
Mhm.
opinion is that I disagree. Like, after being through two MMOs that have made threat go from something that like really matters and you really have to pay attention to basically non-existent, I've come to decide that threat doesn't really matter to me, and it's not an engaging mechanic.
Mhm.
I'm the only time it's an engaging mechanic is when it's really difficult to manage, which I don't feel like it's ever been really difficult to manage in 14.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, and like I've said before, 14 has been like the first MMO, like pretty much my exclusive MMO when it comes to like playing stuff at endgame. Um. So it's not necessarily like my opinion should be everything to people, but like um just basing it off of my experience, like I started out learning stuff like that, and for me like it felt more like the amount of time and effort that I put into getting decent at aggro management and stancing, because I had just learned how to get pretty good at that when it got taken away, and like that's what kind of got me a little jaded. It's just like I feel like if I spent a little more time being a tank at endgame during Stormblood, I probably would feel exactly the same as you. But just
Would you
because
say
of my
that
limited
it's
experience.
would you say that it's more the case that you miss aggro management as a fight mechanic, of
Mm-hmm.
which tanks were kind of the most visible interactors with it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, and
Yeah,
like,
I appreciate the idea that, tanks kind of just felt like a sort of figurehead to that fight mechanic, and that it was
yeah,
more just a little bit of extra for everybody.
yeah. I mean, there are lots of other things in Stormblood that I miss from, like going into Shadowbringers, but
Can
they would
I
have that'd be a whole
first can I break in
thing.
here real quick?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if we're gonna have this discussion, it would be better to have in the retrospective,
Yeah, and that's
because
what I was
I'm
getting at.
looking backward as opposed to looking forward
Yeah,
right now.
and that's what I was getting at is like I would talk about a lot of this in another podcast. Like this, we could this is a whole category in on its own. But yeah, enough of that tangent. Let's go ahead and move on. But opinions are opinions. So
So as far as that goes, I believe that was all of the sort of general changes that are coming to tanks. I'm looking over the graphic that they put up during the original live letter, about upcoming adjustments to the tank role, and they do talk about the concept of using defensive enhancements at optimal times will grant you greater benefits. That, honestly, I would say get into that on the jobs that actually affects, because I don't
Yeah,
find that to have been a global change. It's a change to a couple of moves, but they were clearly very proud of it. So we'll talk about it in more detail when we get to those jobs.
yeah, sounds good.
Speaking of, what jobs would y'all like to start with?
I have all four brought up. I figured we would let Aemide do the honors of picking the first one.
doesn't matter to me. Roll a d4.
Roll a d4. Okay. Somebody have a d4? Wait,
Google
I mean,
does.
I
Came
was
up
kind of
three.
being facetious. You can
came
just
up
Well,
three.
I
The third,
rolled it. It came up
Okay.
three. Who the
So
fuck is tank
the
three?
third one that I have here is Paladin. So I guess we're starting with Paladin.
Okay then. My
So
forte.
Paladin really didn't get any changes.
No.
Moving on to Dark Knight.
All right.
So
No.
Paladin, I'm probably like the one person in the world that isn't real happy with the Paladin changes. A lot of people seem to be pretty hype about the fancy Confitor combo, and it does look pretty freaking cool. Like from a visual standpoint, it's a neat ability.
Mhm.
But I'm not super thrilled with it because now a big part of our rotation is going to be, hey, press Holy Spirit 4 times in a row, then plus press Comfortor 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
And that's just not
You're
very
not a fan of your
engaging.
magical continuation, I take it.
Well, before we get too deep into that, the first thing I want to do, and I hate to interrupt your train of thought, but like let's talk about paladin in general first, right? Like, what is a paladin? What do you expect? What would you expect as someone that hasn't learned paladin or like is looking at it and like, um, as like maybe a beginner, and what would you tell them? What would you tell them that they can kind of like expect out of the job?
Um, Paladin is, I mean, it's your it's your typical fantasy paladin slash Templar slash Crusader, tank with a sprinkling of magic, sword and board. Like it's a very bog standard class. Um, I mean, I guess if I had to explain it, because like someone has literally never played a game like this before, it would be, um, you are the best tank at protecting your party and at saving your party when things really go sideways.
Yeah.
I've always kind of internally thought of Paladin as the ultimate off tank. I don't know if that's true to your experience or if that's an oversimplification.
That was
I mean, I
actually.
wouldn't say
Mhm.
ultimate off tank. So the way it's currently designed, I think they do make a better off tank than main tank, but it's such a slim margin. Like one of the things you always hear people
Optimization, yeah.
say is oh, paladin should off tank because they have spirits
Spirits
within,
Within, yeah.
which scales with their max health. So if they're not, full health, they do less damage, right? And yeah, that's true, but that's on one ability, which is what's spirits within, like 5% or 7% or 3% or something like that of your total damage is spirits within.
Hmm.
So when you miss some damage on a few of those casts, it really doesn't hurt you that much.
Yeah.
Um, there's
I was actually
also
thinking more
intervention.
intervention. Yeah.
Intervention is good, but it's not like hugely noticeably better than um, any of the other equivalent abilities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
But
technically it's the
it's
best
non
off tank, but it's by a small enough margin that it's kind of an academic only distinction.
yeah.
okay.
And as for people that are watching this stream, just so you know, these visuals were brought to you in part by Gamer Escape. You can see like these visuals on their website. Would definitely recommend taking a look at that on your own after this podcast. But we also added a couple of neat little additions to it. Well, at least Brad did. I'm not going to take credit for this. He basically put little icons indicating if things are completely new, which are going to be in the yellow on the upper right hand corner of each tooltip. If it's changed only, it's just going to be in blue on the upper right hand corner, like you see here. But yeah, sorry to interrupt. Let's go ahead and continue.
Okay. Brad, were you still?
Oh,
Did you
the
still
the
have something
the
there?
the comment I was going to make was, and I definitely see your point that it's a minor optimization. If that, obviously paladins can main tank very comfortably, but like intervention is not something that you can use on yourself, for example.
No, but you have Sheltron for that.
Hmm.
You do. Um,
I,
I
I
suppose
mean,
that's
I
fair.
just I wouldn't call it the ultimate off tank because that to a new player would probably imply it's much better at off tanking than it is compared to the other tanks.
Um, and they did like just as a general tank thing for Shadowbringers, they did say that they wanted to guide people away from the idea that there are off tanks and there are main tanks. So each tank is still really good at either role. It's just dependent on personal play style and what you prefer to play. If you want to be a main tank and you want to play Paladin, go ahead and play Paladin. If you want to be an off tank and play Warrior, that's just as fine too. You know,
Um,
stuff like that.
Anyway, so going back to the Paladin specific changes, I talked about their damage combo,
Mm-hmm.
and how
Yeah.
I'm really not all that thrilled with it. Um, Because literally, like you could take away that combo and the job would play exactly the same. The
Mhm.
bigger change and the change that I am happy with is the 3 seconds or 3 seconds, wow, 30 seconds on um atonement. That gives you more flexibility. That'll be good. I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna play out. I haven't really done like theory crafting, for the new abilities or whatever, like as far as, oh, this is going to be, where your damage comes from and whatever, like this is going to be your rotation. And a lot of that stuff with paladins especially is generally fight specific optimizations. Like I'm pretty sure the target dummy rotation is going to stay the same as it currently is, just with the new abilities substituted in for that first combo after your magic phase.
Mhm.
And the 30-second thing is going to be more for atonement, is going to be more fight specific optimizations.
It
Like
definitely
Um,
seems
downtime
like
stuff,
Paladin.
or
hmm?
like for downtime specifically, or
Yeah, and there's stuff you can do right now. Like there's a 4 atonement rotation where instead of because you can get 11 GCDs in under your fight or flight, correct?
Mhm.
Um, well, I mean that is correct. I don't know why I phrased it like that. You can get you can get 11 GCDs in under fight or flight. So how it's kind of intended to be played is you do your 3 atonements and then, or you do your goring blades, your royal authority, your 3 atonements, and rinse repeat, right? Um, but what you can actually do is you can um, you start out like normal in like that in your opener, but then after your opener, you do a goring blade, um, and then your royal authority, and you only do 2 atonements, and then you go into fight or flight, and instead of um, using your first GCD being the riot blade, you hold it and you use the first GCD in fight or flight as the goring blade, and then you use that one remaining atonement charge, and then you do your royal authority, you do 2 more atonements, you do another goring blade, and then you do your last atonement.
And that should be easier to
Um,
do now that the stacks last
and
much longer.
it should be easier to do, like, because currently with the 15 seconds, if you're forced away for even like half a second because of a mechanic, you lose that last charge and you can't do it. Um, and or like if you have poor latency or something like that. Um, so you can maybe see, and I mean that's still going to be a thing, right? But
Mhm.
what I was more alluding to after that long digression is that optimizations like that, but more extreme, will probably be available, but it's going to be very, very fight specific. Like you're not going to theory craft it out as like, oh, this funky way of doing it is like, the best way on a target dummy. The target dummy rotation is going to be the same.
Mhm. But
Um,
between that and the changes to Requiescat, I would imagine that you will actually be able to get pretty funky with fight specific optimizations without losing anything.
we'll see, because you are still constrained by the fact that you have to use you have to use all 3 of your atonement charges before your next royal authority, and that you want to keep your goring blade dot up 100% of the time. So those still do constrain you, um, which is why I think it's going to be more fight specific optimizations rather than wholesale rotational changes.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Speaking of
so
optimizations,
that's
though.
that's that's the good change, is that 30-second on the atonements
Mhm.
window. Um, Personally, what I would have really liked to have seen was a new OGCD. And I would have really liked it to have been tied into Gauge somehow. Like I was envisioning something like when you use Sheltron or Intervention, you unlock the ability to use, a shield swipe, burn shield swipe back, right? You unlock
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
ability to use shield swipe, and you can use shield swipe for, it gives a buff for somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds, and within that window you can use it, and it can stack up to 2 times, so you can you know Sheltron back to back, something like that, right? is really what I was envisioning. Um, and
What's
obviously
that?
we didn't get
Wanted
that.
a
We
gauge
didn't get a
spender?
new. Hmm?
I said, what was that? You wanted a gauge spender? Quietly weeps in Scholar.
Mm, yeah.
I
But
mean,
obviously we didn't get that. Um, I'm kind of disappointed that cover didn't change at all. I see no reason for it to cost half my gauge bar when it's also a 2-minute cooldown and an extremely restrictive range. Just seems silly.
Mm.
Shield Bash is still in the game. Why? Like the skill
Scholar's
didn't serve a
doesn't have a
purpose
gauge
in
spender.
Shadowbringers. It doesn't serve a purpose now. In it won't serve a purpose in Endwalker.
Tether is
Really
not
useful in
exist.
Hawk Manor.
Like, do you? I'm pretty sure you have class ability stun slash silences by that level.
You do, but you need more stuns than that in Hawk Manor. You need to stun a lot of things in Hawk Manor.
Oh my
Shield
goodness! Get the
bash.
fuck out of here.
Not wrong. I have a lot of
Um,
pleasant memories about running through Hawk Manor as a gladiator, feeling very proud of myself.
get the fuck out of here.
All
It's
right then.
it's a pointless ability. Um. So yeah, I mean, I guess I just didn't see any of the changes that were on my wish list. So,
Yeah. I
um,
would like to point out that most of those
yeah.
changes, and this isn't any sort of like criticism. A lot of those changes are like damage rotation wise. What happened for a paladin a lot is, from what I'm seeing at least, is the magic rotation as well as just mitigations in general.
Sheltron, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the only, and I mean, I guess now is a fine enough time. No, you know what? We'll save the invul discussion for Dark Knight.
Yeah. But like,
Um,
I mean, from what we're reading here, there are a shit ton of healing effects added to a lot of things Paladin does rotationally.
Sheltron is your new mitigative button, but as far as improving your mitigations, you got like half a dozen fucking traits to add healing to everything.
Mm-hmm.
well, Sheltron is not new. Sheltron gets an additional effect, like most of the short cooldown mitigations get, and one of those effects is a heal over time.
Yeah.
Um,
You're talking about
but
holy
Sheltron itself is not a new ability.
Right. The level 35 version of it is staying the same. The level 82 version of it is the new shit.
Yeah.
Um, and then, sorry, I'm trying to multitask because I queued up for an alliance raid and we got World of Darkness and it's actually going shockingly poorly. Um,
No worries.
I'm trying to think of what a shockingly poorly run of World of Darkness would be in, because every bad run of World of Darkness I've been in has been exactly as anticipated.
anyway, I wasn't trying to derail to just explain that that's why I'm kind of stuttering over here a bit.
No worries.
No. But I will say, speaking
So,
as an ignorant, or
oh,
as an ignoramus, and someone who
so the
tanked.
thing is the healing, the additional healing is nice, but it kind of ties back into what I said about tanks in general at the start, which is
Mhm.
that the feel of them hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not going to press Sheltron in situations where you would not press it now.
Yep.
You're not going to use your magic, the magic phase of your rotation just to get the heal. Like if it's overheal, it's overheal, right? It's like
Yeah.
Phoenix on Summoner. Like you're not gonna change when you use Phoenix just to get the healing on the group,
Yeah. Healing is a nice
unless you're
bonus.
unless you're doing an what was it, like an 8 Summoner Titan or whatever it was.
Yeah. It's like the only
Um,
difference is like instead of the healers overhealing, it's all
the
the tanks as
paladin
well as well.
overhealing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't change the way the job is played at all, and that's why I didn't like discuss it really. Didn't really mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, the Spirits Within, I think, lost its health
that
requirement
is a
and
good
then
change as
also
well. Yeah.
upgrades to a different ability. Like we did
Which
technically get a
is,
new OGCD, but like it's just
but
an
we
upgrade.
didn't because
Yeah.
it's the same button.
Exactly.
It's just
Exactly.
AOE now for some reason.
Yeah. Um,
Um, hmm.
but I mean, Paladin feels very much the same. It's like if you liked Paladin in Shadowbringers, you're gonna like it in Endwalker. If you didn't like it in Shadowbringers, you're not gonna like it in Endwalker.
Yeah.
Like that's what it comes down to.
I think I'll
Um,
probably like it more in Endwalker than I did in Shadowbringers, and I'll tell you why. It's always felt, for me, it is Paladin has always felt like there's a hole in its mitigation kit, called Clemency. which is a really good button that I'm not allowed to press under basically any circumstances outside of it'll save the run if I push it. Them being able to incorporate healing into their kit in other ways that don't require a sacrifice of a GCD is a change that I like,
Yeah,
It's fair.
and there's
especially
also
for
Um,
dungeon runs.
and there's also a lot of self sustain as well
Oh yeah, no,
in AOE
Paladin's gonna be
pulls.
really, really good in dungeons.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Just
and
because Holy Circle
actually, it's
heals
funny
you.
you mentioned that because the one other thing that I, it's a meme, but I also genuinely wanted it. Is I wanted an AOE clemency.
Divine
We
Veil.
got it. It's
Yeah.
called
No
Divine
joke.
Veil.
No. Like a spammable
You
heal.
can. Got you.
Okay.
I wanted, and also Divine Veil is a shield, not a heal.
It
I
It
heals you
heals.
wanted
now.
an
It heals.
It heals you now.
well, okay, true. Um,
Which
when it
doesn't
doesn't
make any sense
overheal.
to me. Yeah. Like,
I think they're because Warrior got the same treatment, and I think their rationale is because a large majority of the time, the percent mitigation abilities are way better than the shield abilities as far as the tank AoE mitigations go. And so I think them adding healing to the Paladin and Warrior AoE mits is an attempt to bring parity between the skills. Um, Although if you're at full health, it'll just be overheal. Like if you're
yeah.
shielding for a mechanic that's about to smack you for, terminal relativity levels of damage, um, it's just going to overheal. But there are times where that 400 potency will be nice.
I also forgot to say,
Yeah,
Nico.
back-to-back raid wides, it'll be
I
nice
hope
for
you're having a good
those.
night. Good to see you
Although I
today.
would point out that I'm pretty sure the percent mitigations still trump in back-to-back
Probably, but
raid
they're
wide
closer
situations.
now.
They'll be closer.
Um,
Yeah.
but and again, like that doesn't change how the job is played. You're not going to use it's not going to change when you use fail.
Yeah.
True. Do we want to talk about that thing that we mentioned at the top of the hour, with this concept of timing your mitigations properly to get additional effects out of them? Because
Um,
I feel like Paladin is one of the two poster boys for that concept.
there's three. It's everyone but Dark Knight does it.
Mhm.
Um,
I'd like to
Oh,
know.
right. Warrior does have that change, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to hear
So-
about it. Yeah.
So first of all, to be clear, it's only on the short mitigation abilities, like the Rampart and the Sentinel equivalents are not changing in any way. They're exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So
Would you like me to read the
I
tooltips to you?
no,
Because I know
I know
you're
what it
at
does. I know what
Okay.
it does. I'm just I'm trying to think of what I want to say about it.
Hmm.
I think that if tank damage doesn't ramp up significantly, that the buffs to those classes of abilities are just going to make tanks feel really overpowered, and it's going to be kind of dumb, to be honest. So I'm really hoping that tank damage gets ramped up, or damage that tanks receive gets ramped up significantly, but I'm not holding my breath.
That makes 3
I'm,
of us, by the way.
I'm expecting it to be roughly equivalent, and tanks just require even less attention from the healers than they currently do.
I mean, if you
Um,
have a sage in your party and you have Cardia going on, as well as being in your magic combo, like that's a shit ton of fucking healing going your way.
mhm.
Like that's insane.
So I mean, they're going to be really, really powerful abilities because basically within that window, they are now stronger, or they're going to be roughly equivalent to Sentinel, but they're going to be Sentinels on 25-second cooldowns. So it's just going to be really, really powerful.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And
Every Sheltron is a 1,000 potency heal.
Yep.
yeah,
It's
I don't.
it's fucking clemency. Which, hey, I was just asking for ways to use clemency without actually having to push that button.
I mean, I don't really have anything else to say about it.
I mean, Holy Spirit's half a clemency almost. So.
True. And after you've hit them all, you're getting, what is that, 1,600?
Yep.
It's 4 Holy Spirits and then 4 Confidors?
It's a clemency and a half.
There you go. I will say, you mentioned all three of us not holding their breaths. Looking over the tank stuff and taking it in with the healer stuff, I would be shocked if they don't start hurting us more in Endwalker.
Same.
I hope so, but
Like,
and
there's
it's also a
just no
possibility
way.
that they hurt us more, but that like, you know, they hurt us by, you know, 10% more when we have 20% more mitigations available. You know what I mean? And those are
Tanks with
just random
dots.
numbers to show my point.
I'd
No,
like.
I got you.
I'm getting ahead of myself, but I would like to see like tank-specific dots and stuff on top of the autos, just to make it a little bit more evil. But
Yeah, that'd be
we'll,
that'd
we'll,
be fair,
we'll
I
get
think.
to we'll get to wish lists and
Um,
stuff later on in the cast.
I was just doing them as they came up per
Yeah.
tank. But yeah, I don't have much else to say about Paladin except a couple things that I'm gonna save for other tanks because it's kind of a multi-tank thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right. The invuln thing you mentioned.
and something else. But
Ooh,
let's talk
and
about
something
Gunbreaker
else.
next because the something else is actually tied into Gunbreaker.
All right.
Let me see.
Okay.
I
So
guessed
first of
correctly.
all, the something else, I feel like it's very strange that Paladin got a heal over time on Sheltron, where Gunbreaker got an XCOG effect on Heart of Stone. That feels backwards to me, because Sheltron is the one short cooldown mitigation that you can actually use like back to back because it's on the gauge system. But its hot lasts for, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 15 seconds, right?
It's 12 seconds.
It's 12 seconds. Okay, its hot lasts for 12 seconds. Wait, how much does it heal a tick then?
250 per tick.
Oh, I was thinking it was 200 per tick. Okay. Point still stands though. It's 12 seconds, but you can use it as soon as 5 seconds apart.
You
Now you
eight-
probably won't
8
want to.
seconds.
You're probably gonna want to use it. No, you could use it 5 seconds. It's a 5-second cooldown.
Right, it's a 5-second cooldown. It's just that its effects last 8 seconds. You're right.
Does. So that's what I was gonna say is usually it'll be 8 seconds, but still that's 8 seconds. You're still overwriting 1 to 2 ticks depending on server ticks.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
So before we get too far in, I do want to kind of go back and talk about Gunbreaker just as a
Give it some kind of introduction.
yeah, like
Okay.
I know most people here know what Gunbreaker and everything is, but like just on the off chance people are here, they're like, oh, what is this job? What does it do? Kind of,
I'm
I-
looking to play tank in Endwalker and have never tanked before. Which one should I pick? Well,
Gunbreaker is the
Gunbreaker has a
DPS
gun.
tank.
yes,
Yeah.
Gunbreaker feels more like a DPS than any of the other tanks, which is just going to ramp up more in Endwalker.
hmm
That's
Sorry,
all I have to
Dark
say
Knight,
about
you've been
Gunbreaker.
replaced.
It has the worst mitigation technically, but its mitigation is still more than enough to get the job done, especially with the Heart of Stone buffs. Which it's what is it even called now? Like
Heart of Corundum.
Corundum?
Yes.
Yeah. The Heart of Corundum. Especially with that, like it's gonna have all the tools you need to mitigate, even though it is technically, actually, it might not even be technically the worst anymore in Endwalker. But yeah, that's all I got to say about Gunbreaker as a general overview.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I go back to what I was
Yes,
saying?
I did not. I feel so bad for interrupting you every single time for this, but like,
All right. So Paladin has the hot, even though you can potentially overwrite it, and then Gunbreaker has the XCOG effect, even though it already has a hot in Aurora, and so having a hot on Heart of Corundum actually makes sense to me because it fits that theme of, oh, we're the only tank with a hot heal, with a heal over time effect. So that just feels backwards to me. It's a minor thing. It's not going to matter most of the time. It just feels weird. I think it would feel more natural if the two were swapped.
I wonder if it had some. No, never mind. I was going to say something incredibly stupid.
you
So
sure
I
want
won't.
to just say it? Okay.
No, I was under the misapprehension that the regen was something that was transferred if you use the ability on somebody else.
What
Or
you
is
mean
it
for
Heart of
which?
Corundum? So when you use Heart of Corundum on another person, do they get the regen as well?
It's not
Yeah.
a regen. It's an
It's-
XCOG
It's the
effect.
XCOG
Yeah.
effect.
But
Sorry.
almost positive they get it. I can look at the tooltip
Okay.
real quick,
Yeah,
but
no,
I'm
In that
almost
it does.
positive.
That's what it says. Yeah.
In that case, what I'm wondering is, were there any kind of like server fuckery of trying to transfer a regen to someone else via that skill? I don't imagine there would be,
I mean,
but
I it's just a normal regen. Like there's nothing special about it. And if there was fuckery, there'd be fuckery with intervention because intervention also gives the hot, just like
you're right.
Yeah.
Sheltron does.
And it
So yeah,
still doesn't change the fact that
there's no
Paladin
way that
shouldn't
that's
have it
it.
that way.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, Heart of Corundum is going to be really strong. Like really strong.
That's why they gave
Um,
it to Astro.
all.
uh,
Um,
there is so much fucking healing going on in this game.
um,
I love it.
and then Double Down is a dumb skill.
Which one
Okay.
is Double Down?
Double
Double
Down
down
is the
is your
new one.
cap
That's
skill.
two cartridge spender. It spends 2 cartridges.
Mm-hmm.
And Gunbreaker is one of the ones that really, I think that's the worst offender of the job plays fine at 80, but we don't really know what to do with it, so just more of the same. Because the more of the same that they added actually kind of breaks it from a smoothness perspective. Like its damage is still going to be good. Um, but it breaks it from a smoothness perspective. First of all, getting an extra cartridge is also kind of dumb because it doesn't change how you play the job. You're still going to bank your max number of cartridges and just use them on burst strike so that you don't overcap right outside of your burst
Yeah.
window. It's so you're just going to be sitting on 3 cartridges instead of 2.
Would that mean you're more encouraged to hit Double Down then? Because
No, Double Down is a minute cooldown.
Yeah,
Oh.
you'll hit it during your No Mercies,
You
and
you
that's
hit
it.
it
Okay.
during your No Mercy.
I'm
Um,
literally staring at it. It did not occur to me. I'm sorry.
the reason it is dumb is because, and it's fine in every other um No Mercy, like your second, your fourth, your sixth, etc. But in your first, third, fifth, etc's, it actually fucks with your No Mercy window, and it is literally impossible to get everything in under No Mercy that you want to. Um, because if you look at like the number of cartridge, and I don't have like the exact thing in front of me, right? But
Mhm.
if you look at it currently, how Gunbreaker currently works, okay? You get under your Bloodfest No Mercy, you get your Gnashing Fane combo, you get your Fancy Dot, and then you get um one oh, what's the ability called that ends there? Solid Barrel? Solid
Yes.
Barrel. You get one Solid Barrel, and then the rest are all burst strikes. Okay, that's how it works currently. Um, so in the change, yes, you have Double Down, which now takes 2 cartridges, so that eats up one of your extra cartridges. But you're starting with 3 cartridges, and you get 3 cartridges from Bloodfest. So you now have 6 cartridges in your Bloodfest No Mercy, as opposed to currently you have 4. So even with Double Down requiring an extra cartridge, you still have one extra cartridge available in Endwalker, and you don't have an extra GCD under No Mercy.
And so yeah, and that was something that I was thinking about too. But like, do you think that if Bloodfest still only gave you 2 cartridges, would it be a lot
Yes.
better?
Yes.
Okay, that's
yes,
what I was
do.
thinking as well.
Um, and I'm also like I have like, even though I like Gunbreaker, it's my second favorite tank, I have a lot of like nitpicky issues with it that are all kind of coming out now because they're being exacerbated by the Endwalker changes. Um, Continuation sucks ass.
Oh yeah.
Like the concept itself is cool, but the fact that you're forced to use it after each ability in your Gnashing Fang combo feels awful. Especially, like, I hate main tanking as a Gunbreaker because if you have to reposition the boss during your continuation, good fucking luck. If you have to pop mitigations during your continuation, it just feels bad.
Yep.
And it would be much better if every time you used one of your Gnashing Fang hits, you got a stack of a continuation buff that lasted for 15 seconds, 20 seconds, something like that. And you could just use continuation at any time in that window, and it could just stack up to 3 times. So if you needed to double weave mitigations, or if you needed to move the boss during your Gnashing Fang combo, you just sit on your continuations for like 6 seconds until you're done moving the boss, you know?
Yeah.
And that
So
feels
that's
great.
yeah, yeah, and that would feel great. And it's gonna get even worse now because now Heart of Stone is all Heart of Stone. Wow, Solid Barrel, or not Solid Barrel. Oh my God, Burst
Burst
Strike.
strike.
Burst Strike is now also going to trigger continuation. So you have another GCD that you need to continuation on.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ugh.
Locking
Um,
you down more and more.
Yep, yep, making you more and more like more rigid, more restrictive, like
Makes you
less
almost
options
wanna
to
play
double weave.
an off tank.
I know, right? I see Gunbreaker is actually, I think, the preferred off tank because not because of their defensive abilities, but because of continuation being such a pain in the ass.
It's like we're not great at being an off tank, but we really hate being a main tank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If the boss never moves, it's fine. Yeah, I'll main tank all fucking day. But
Yeah, I'll main tank the shit out of this dummy. Oh no, it's moving for anti-air.
yeah,
Nah.
but
I need
and then
6 more gap closers.
Super Bolide got buffed to 10 seconds. That's cool.
What was it?
Um,
What was it before?
8 seconds.
Yeah, those 2 seconds are
Um,
definitely a huge difference.
Yeah, I
For
mean,
sure.
it might take an extra auto. It's nice.
No, I'm
you
not.
know,
I'm,
it's a quality
that's
of
not me
life
being
thing.
sarcastic. I like legitimately. I think that's a huge
Oh,
thing. Like that's a full
some
GCD
sarcastic.
of like extra just mitigation, right? Like that's awesome.
Yeah,
That-
it gives you a little bit more flexibility
Yeah.
with it, so it's good. You know, it's not game breaking, but it's good.
Yeah.
And then
Well, I hate it because the damage it does to itself doesn't count as damage, so it won't interact with my macrocosmos.
yeah, that does kind of suck. That'd be broken as hell, though.
Fuck off.
Aurora with 2 charges is
Just place collar
whatever,
forehead.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. It's nothing to write home about. I don't think it's not bad.
Now you can regen
Um,
yourself and a healer, so neither of you died or raid wide while the rest of your party's floor tanking.
I know, right? There's something else I was gonna say, but I forgot what it was. Oh God, what else was it? I bitched about continuation, and I bitched about no mercy. I'm drawing a blank. Oh,
Gap closers?
that's the other thing. I can mention gap closers in a second. So I don't like how Double Down is a 60-second ability. I am not a fan in general of abilities that line up exactly with damage buff cooldowns because it feels too like automatic. Like I prefer it if the damage ability is like some percentage of the buff, right? So if it's like a 30-second cooldown or a 20-second cooldown and the buff is like a 60-second cooldown.
So that
Because-
some of them fall inside
So
it.
it doesn't feel
Yeah.
as strict, yeah?
Right. So that, well, it doesn't feel strict, and also then because you have more of an opportunity to be bad and let them drift, and so then you have more of an opportunity to feel good because you're like, I kept everything lined up, you know. But when they share a cooldown, it's very very brainless, and I'm not a huge fan of that. So
Square peg
Yeah.
goes in square hole, stupid.
yeah.
I do have to
Um,
ask, because I know that you do play a decent amount of Gunbreaker. Does that job want 0 skill speed in
No.
Shadowbreakers?
No. It wants skill speed. It absolutely wants skill speed.
Is it still gonna want it in Endwalker?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
So
Because that'll
do
make
you?
Double Down drift not
No,
enough.
it doesn't, because double down is one of those abilities that its cooldown is actually reduced by your skill speed.
Mm-hmm. Like it says
Right.
59.4 here, and like, where the fuck is it?
No,
Oh,
you
yeah.
actually want about a 2 point. If I remember correctly, like the
2.4
optimal
something.
is like 2.41, but like as long as you're in like the 2.4 to 2.42 range, you're pretty good.
Oh,
Um, yeah. No,
yeah.
Gunbreaker very much so wants some skill speed, because one, it's if you were at 2.5, you wouldn't be able to get 9 GCDs under No Mercy.
Which would
Um,
further exacerbate the problem of not having enough room in No Mercy to begin with.
right.
Right, right.
Um, and also doing that actually keeps it, it works kind of like Samurai, where a bit of skill speed actually keeps you lined up cleaner
Okay. See,
with your
I see
first
things like
windows.
this. I see things like this, and my head immediately goes to Shadowfang.
Hmm.
No,
Uh,
well, see, but Ninja's a different beast because
yeah,
Ninja gets skill speed in its base kit essentially.
right.
Um, and it also Ninja also has something like 35-ish, I think, percent of its damage is completely skill speed agnostic. Like skill speed doesn't affect it whatsoever, and
Mm.
that's really what makes skill speed bad on Ninja.
It's just because everything else is better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'm still gonna enjoy Gunbreaker. I'll get used to it. I hope they change some of the things. The one wishlist ability that I had that they didn't add is I thought it would have been really, really cool if they, because it is like the gun class, right? Or at least the gun tank. You know, machinist exists. It's the gun tank. I thought it would have been really cool if they did something with oh, what's their ranged attack? Thunder shot?
Lightning shot.
Lightning shot.
Lightning shot. Lightning shot.
Close enough.
With lightning shot, where like as you use cartridges, it actually makes your lightning shot stronger, and so you get to a point where it's actually a DPS gain to use lightning shot.
That would work well with the change they made that your ranged attacks don't break your combos anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It
and
would be fucking free.
I thought that would have been really cool, especially if like they could have. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like if they could have found some way to balance it so that you could hold onto it for a certain amount of time, like maybe only cartridges spent under No Mercy buffed it or something like that, so that you essentially had like a minute to hold onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you could, if you had to disengage, or if it was one of those fights like I don't know, E9S, where you can technically do it without disengaging anti-air, but it's like difficult and a pain in the ass, right? You could give yourself that little bit of extra breathing room by just like backing up and tossing a lightning shot at it. Um, yeah, Mecha, we'll get there. We'll get to the new on-men trait. Oh boy. Um, yeah, that was kind of my wish list thing where I was like, oh, wouldn't this be cool in like a conceptual sort of way?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, before we
but
forget about gap closers, let's talk about the gap closers too.
I was gonna mention it on Warrior since they got 3 charges and
Sure.
theirs changed the most, but
Yeah,
we can
okay, yeah,
talk
yeah.
about it now, I guess.
No, we'll talk about it with Warrior then. We'll talk
Okay.
about it with Warrior.
Um,
And with that, we turn our attention to Warrior.
yeah, I know, right? Okay, so my thing with Warrior, if I were to have to describe it to someone, Warrior is the Unga Bunga tank. Um,
What
The
makes
Warrior
it?
Unga
have
tank, and they used to be the green number tank.
They used to be the big brain tank.
Warrior have, yeah, like a patch, like literally a patch. Um, but yeah,
Warrior is about spamming one button, and as far as their tanking style is concerned, it at least it used to be in Shadowbringers. My health is low. I should hit buttons that make my health high again.
I mean,
Nascent Flash is very good.
Nascent Flash is still gonna be good.
It is. It's getting even better.
So,
More things is better.
well, as far as I mean, yeah, overall, Nascent Flash is definitely an improvement. The healing wise, it'll be a nerf if you're under IR, but a buff otherwise, which I personally think is a good thing. I think it's good that it's no longer tied to like your IR or infuriate usage, that you can just pop it whenever and get the same benefit from it.
And
I
consistency is good.
Yeah, I personally like that change. I think it's a positive change overall, even if it won't feel as cool to be able to like run into a trash pack of 20 mobs, and whichever dungeon has that one big 20 mob pull, and then just like hit IR and nascent and
Become
cleave
immortal.
and literally like fill up 80% of your health bar every GCD, because that's pretty much what you can do right now. And it's fun. It's stupid as fuck. And I'm convinced that that's why they're changing it, is for the dungeons, not so much for the raids. I'm convinced that's why they changed Nascent Flash, is because they didn't want a tank to be able to do that. Because they changed Gunbreaker's Abyssal Drain from Shadowbringers to Stormblood, or I said that backwards, from Stormblood to Shadowbringers.
We also said
For the
Gunbreaker,
same
and
reason.
Dark Knight.
Oh,
Yep.
I meant Dark Knight, yeah.
Yep.
They changed Dark Knight's Abyssal Drain going
Yeah,
into Shadowbringers, I think for the same reason, because they didn't want a tank to be able to full heal themselves on massive trash packs.
and they are changing
fun
Abyssal
as it
Drain
is.
again for Endwalker. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, to clarify what you're talking about, one of the pseudo global changes they made is basically any healing you had that was in any way related to your damage has been turned into a flat potency.
Mm-hmm. But it's still going to be, I believe, 1600 potency. So it's going to be the same amount of healing as you get as a paladin in your magic phase.
Mhm.
But you actually have a little bit more flexibility around it, and like you're more guaranteed to be using it when you're actually taking damage, because it's tied to your mitigation skill.
Right.
But
Although I
yeah,
will
I don't
say
know.
the days of having our warrior tank pop Holmgang and tell us I don't need you to heal me at all, Nascent's up at the same time, and watch him basically just go back up to 75-80% of his health bar. That's probably going away, but that's fine because all healers got 16 additional healing buttons.
Yeah, and then Sage is also your pocket healer.
The pocket healer who is also saying every 20 seconds I must heal or I'm going to be out of mana by minute 3.
Yeah, it's great. Watch spell
Big
speed.
pockets.
Spell speed be
Um,
the stat too.
but yeah, warrior also got a buff to equilibrium, if I remember correctly. I think it has a hot attached to it now.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's going to heal for even more.
That's
It is
So that's kind of cool.
1,000 potency regen.
Which I guess does kind of invalidate what I said about Aurora earlier, with them being the tank with the hot. But still,
Everybody
I
gets a
I
hot
stand,
except
the-
Dark
I
Knight.
stand by it. I
The,
stand by it.
the
I
only
stand by
difference
it.
between Gunbreaker and Warrior Hot is that Gunbreaker can put the hot on anyone, and
And it
then
has two charges.
Yeah, and Warrior can only do it to themselves.
Yep.
So
And then they get primal rend. It literally it's gonna feel like this. Oh! In a release. That's such a positive change.
Yep.
The
What
fact that it's-
changed?
The fact that it's 60 seconds now instead of 90 is such a positive change, and the fact that it's 3 charges instead of a duration, and that's such a positive change. That's so good. You get to line up your inner release with every raid buff window now.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to worry about oh no, I'm lagging a little, or I don't have quite enough skill speed, and now I missed my last GCD under inner release. No, it's just you always get them. It's so good. I could actually, you're talking about skill speed on Gunbreakers. I could potentially see warriors. I'm not really a theory crafter, right? But I could potentially see warriors going, "Oh, we don't care about skill speed anymore. Give us as little as you can."
That would make sense. I know Slow Warrior was absolutely a set in the last tier. I don't remember just how slow they ended up getting, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically as slow as you can get and still get all 5 GCDs off under inner release currently, and that's always been the case. That's been the case since they changed inner release to how it currently is back in 4.1 or 4.2. I forget. I think it was 4.2, but I don't remember for sure.
before my time.
And it's been like that ever since, where you get as little skill speed as you can. And then just as little skill speed as you can, kind of depends on your individual connection. I think Psy needs 2.39 or something like that, but I can get away with 2.42 or 2.43, but it's really fucking tight.
I'm pretty sure with how bad I am, I'm rocking like 2.37 or something, and that's not even really ping dependent. Some of that is just me really being bad about where in the weave window I hit IR.
Yeah. Um,
Same.
but yeah, Nascent Flash is gonna be really good still.
Yep.
Whatever the new Bloodwedding, I think, whatever the new version of
Of
oh
nascent,
god,
it's called Bloodwedding.
Yep.
um, no, Nascent is still you use on a target, and then Bloodwedding is the
Bloodwedding is for
new
you.
version of Bloodwedding is the new version of I'm trying to blank on what the ability is called, but they're
Raw intuition.
Raw Intuition. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, the new Raw Intuition. That's going to be really good. Um, gives them a shield, which is kind of neat. I feel like that's kind of a callback to warriors used to actually. Wait, no, I'm talking out my ass now. Never mind. Forget I was going to say anything. They never shielded. What the fuck am I talking about?
I mean, they get a shield when they shake it off.
Yeah.
It's not alien to them, but they'll be able to use it a lot more reliably as part of their personal mitigation.
Yeah. So Blood Wedding's going to be good. 10-second home gain is going to be really going to be nice. Same quality of life that Super gets.
Hmm.
Um,
Still on that short cooldown though.
yep. Which we'll talk about when we get to Dark.
Mm-hmm.
Um. Oh, Mithril Tempest giving the Eye of the Storm buff is huge. That's going to be so nice in dungeons. That's a fucking huge buff, a huge change. That's such a nice quality of life. Like, oh my god, thank you, finally.
Because right now it just extends it.
Correct.
You're talking about actually granting it to
It
you.
will actually grant the buff, so you don't have to do a Storm's Eye combo at the start of a dungeon to get the buff up. You just overpower Mithril Tempest and you got it. It's there. You're
I'm
rocking
pretty
it.
sure we talked about it when we were on the melee cast, but I am such an what do you want to call it? One of the few things I really hate about the melee jobs is the concept of having to do a single target rotation before you can go into AOE.
Yep.
It just
Yep.
makes it feel so
Yep.
clunky in
Yep.
dungeons. So yeah, no, any change like this is one that I support.
It's archaic. I don't get the point of or Jenny, however you say it, the new off global AOE that shares a cooldown with upheaval. Like, why not just give upheaval the same treatment that like you gave to
Spirits Within.
Spirits
Right?
Within
Yeah.
and say it just has 50% damage fall off for every target beyond the first? Like, why have a whole separate ability? That just seems silly to me.
Hmm. Did they feel like they needed to give a warrior a certain number of new buttons to put on their hotbars?
Maybe. I mean, Warrior is the. I'm pretty sure they have less buttons than any of the other tanks, so that very well could have been it.
Mm.
Um, but if so, that's a silly reason, especially because they could have given them a whole other ability that wasn't just AoE upheaval, and they could have still had AoE upheaval and something else.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, but again, it kind of ties back to what I said at the very start generally of it kind of feels like they just kept all the tanks the same, you know?
Yeah.
There's definitely an argument to be made of it feels like 10 more levels of Shadowbringers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's pretty much what all of the tanks feel like to me.
Um,
Uh,
let's talk about the.
Which isn't
Hmm?
necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Gap closer, is that what you were gonna say?
Yeah.
Or yeah,
That's the only
gap
big
closer.
change, really. Other
Um,
big change.
yeah, they no longer cost gauge. That's really fucking good. Like, I kind of wish that upheaval still cost gauge. I'm super fucking happy that onslaught no longer cost gauge. Like, I know that Soul has the opinion that he liked it when Onslaught cost gauge
Yeah.
because then it's quote like a choice, but it's not a choice really.
Yeah.
It's you don't use it unless it's gonna net you like an extra half a GCD or something like that, and then you use it. Like it's and it just it felt bad to me. I hated
Yeah.
it. I'm super glad that it doesn't cost gauge anymore. I think it's weird that it has 3 charges.
Yeah.
When none of the other when all the other tanks have 2. It's almost like they said, okay, so Warrior had the worst gap closer for an expansion, so now we're going to give them the best gap closer for an expansion.
Yeah, my biggest
It's an apology letter. I get it.
my biggest complaint about just the gap closers for tanks in general is that they have a potency attached to it. Personally,
I was going to say that
Yeah.
actually. I agree with that. I would prefer it if the gap closers had 0 potency and all
Just-
of the tanks got an additional OGCD in place of the gap closer that actually just dealt damage.
or if you really cared, like, no, not really cared, but like it's something that probably wouldn't even do anything. Is like, instead of giving it a potency, just like have it make your next action deal increased enmity or something.
Yeah, something. I don't
I
know.
mean,
Like,
all you really would have to do is say, at level 48, tanks unlock a roll action, which causes you to rush to the target. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
We're not talking about really needing to redesign the kits.
Yeah, and actually, if it didn't deal potency, a roll action would work really well. 2
That's
charges.
where it should be. It's the opposite
Yeah.
of like a anti knockback.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree with that. I don't think I really have anything else to say about Warrior.
Yeah.
They're gonna hit
Yeah.
so many fell cleaves.
All 3 of them at a
Well,
time.
I mean, now that you're not spending gauge on onslaught or upheaval, that's more fell cleaves, and then you get fellest cleave.
It's Primal Rent, right? Fucking
Yeah. Primal
Dunk
Red,
Yes,
Master
it's Primal-
Darius.
700 potency.
Dunk Master
Biggest
Darius.
cleave.
Fucking Space Jam. Mama
Yep.
said you're adopted. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
Alright.
then why don't we go down to the problem child
Fucking
then?
Dark Knight. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Melee podcast part 2.
Oh. Oh my god. I don't even know where to start with Dark Knight.
It's so weird that Reaper's cousin gets access to Rampart.
Oh my god. Okay. Alright.
Why does
Oh,
Dark Knight use tank
Hold on.
gear?
We forgot to talk. Wait, did we talk about what Warrior was in terms of like the
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
did.
it's Unga Bunga.
Okay.
Bunga
good.
bunga.
And
Big
so-
green numbers.
All right. So how do we talk about Warrior Light? Sorry.
Okay. So, Dark Knight is it has 2 resources to manage. Like more and I guess that's true for like Paladin or not Paladin. No, not Paladin.
Oh, Paladin
Or-
manages Oath and MP.
Yeah, but it's like more it's automatic. Like they could have 0 MP and you could remove the MP cost from Holy Spirit and a Confitor and it would work the same as it does now. You would use 4 Holy Spirits then a Confitor because that's how the cooldown timing works out.
But if you're spamming Clemency in the middle of your combos, you might not have enough MP when Requiem Scat comes back up.
You're being snarky. I was just making a point that
Sorry. You are.
that they're not really managing their MP as a resource.
Right.
as
It's not
far
an
as
intended
they're-
mechanic.
Yeah.
So I just kind of yeah, I have like dyslexia of the mouth, so sometimes words come out and it's a completely different word from what I meant to say.
No worries.
Anyone who's raided with me and has heard me call out left instead of right knows that all too well.
I call east when I mean west, and west when I mean east. So I totally understand.
I just need to know where the party's going for eruptions.
So
That's it.
So what's I gonna say? Oh yeah. So and I kind of feel like Dark Knight is a little feels or at least it should. I don't know that it necessarily does, but it should feel a little more involved in its secondary resource management than Warrior and Gunbreaker do, even though yes, technically all 3 of them do have another resource to manage. I think that and actually no, now that I think about it, yeah, technically Dark Knight, because Dark Knight has the blood gauge, which would actually be like the rage or whatever they call it in this game for Warrior, or the shells, the ammo for Gunbreaker, and then they have mana on top of that, so they actually do manage more resources. So they're like the resource management tank, and that's kind of like their shtick. And they have like trade-offs of do you use your resource on a mitigation or damage. Although now it's if you use the mitigation properly, you get to use it for both. Um, and they're kind of like the edgy boy. So that's their identity.
Now let's talk about how they fucked it up.
Now let's talk about how they fucked it up. Oh my
Yep.
God, and I almost think it would be better if Dark Knight was fucking unplayable because the thing is it's still going to be playable, right? And I'm afraid that they're not going to fix it in like 6 point. Wait, is it 6 point? Are we in 6 point whatever right now? I can never
No,
remember.
we're in
5
5
point,
now.
yeah. So I'm kind of afraid that like because it's still going to be very playable. Don't get me wrong. As much as I'm bitching, it's going to be a playable job,
It's
right?
still
Like
gets the
you'll be
job
able to
done.
raid on Dark Knight. And I almost feel like that's a bad thing because I'm afraid that they're not going to fix it in like 6.1 or 6.2 because if it was totally fucking broken beyond repair, they would have to fix it, right? They would just have to.
Give it the Stormblood
It's
treatment.
like it's not quite broken enough, but there's so many like little things wrong with the job going into Endwalker.
Would you say it's worse going into Endwalker than it was for like Stormblood?
I feel like that's a very yes, actually, absolutely yes.
Okay.
I also feel like though that the Stormblood thing is very subjective because Stormblood Dark Knight played very differently than Endwalker or Shadowbringer's Dark Knight. And so like I personally was not a huge fan of the Dark Arts spam. Um, I don't think current Dark Knight and Shadowbringers does. I don't think it does enough to really fit the class fantasy of what the job should be. But at the same time, I'm glad that the Dark Arts spam isn't really a thing anymore. I wasn't a huge fan of that.
Mm.
And that's like that seems to be a dividing thing with the community with Dark Knight players. There are some Dark Knight players that really did not like Dark Arts spam, which I am one, and there are some
Like me.
which like you and I think Sai as well, who liked the Dark Arts spam.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a hard comparison to make.
Yeah.
Just because it's so subjective with what did you think of Dark Arts?
I would say that like spiritually or like kind of spiritually, like you kind of get that again through Gunbreaker, but like in a different way that makes it
Yeah,
less unhealthy.
continuation is like a reverse Dark Arts that's
Yeah.
more restrictive, but also
Yeah.
less spammy overall.
Spiritually. Yeah, spiritually.
Um, okay, I guess I'll just look at their fucking ability list. Okay, so their combo, whatever, they only have one combo. I'm not gonna say too much about that. You know, Gunbreakers also only have one combo, so yeah, whatever, it's a thing, I guess. Um, AoE, Abyssal Train.
Salted Earth got changed.
What the fuck with Abyssal Train, man? Like it's a 60-second cooldown that does almost no damage. What purpose does it serve?
It
It's not
heals you.
like Shadowbrain or sorry, Stormblood Abyssal Train was the shit.
It was, I agree, my favorite button
It,
to push.
it was so good. It was very situational, but in the situations it was in, it was so fucking good because you didn't want to use the mana on it in single target.
It was, yeah, it was well,
Um,
that was the only button that felt good to press, like to weave in dark arts with.
Yeah,
I'd
but
say.
in AOE, it was so good. It
Yeah.
was just so. It was. I mean, we touched on it with the warrior, but like the self healing you could do in dungeons
You just,
with
yeah,
abyssal drain and proper MP management, and I liked it because the skill ceiling was actually kind of high. Because
yeah.
if all you did was smash dark arts and abyssal drain, you'd run out of MP in like 3 abyssal drains. Um, but if you
You were just
managed it
talking about
well,
that,
you could
Nox.
you could use quite a few of them in a row, and that was a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what the fuck Abyssal Train is doing in the game. It's kind of like, Shield Bash, where it's like what the fuck? Why is this skill still even here? Like it's 150 potency on a 60-second cooldown. That's so fucking bad.
Okay, to make sure I'm understanding it properly, when I read the tooltip for new Abyssal Drain, it says, all right, 150 potency to the target, all enemies around it,
Mhm.
200 potency heal. That's flat. That's not based on how many enemies hit
Nope.
anymore.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think the tooltip would be written kind of like it is now, if that were the case. So
Oh,
then, hmm.
hold on,
Um,
I'm actually in game right now. Let me see Abyssal Drain. Actually, it's the exact same wording.
okay.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
it does heal per target hit, but considering it's on a 60-second cooldown,
And yeah,
you can't really do the same sort of shit that you could with it with old Abyssal Drain or with current like Shadowbringer's current nascent
yeah,
and IR.
yeah.
Oh
Like
no,
Um,
absolutely not. But like I'm looking at it and thinking, all right, that's the exact same potency as the ability we just talked about on Warrior,
the
Arajani,
the
and
biggest
that's a 30-second cooldown.
the
yeah.
biggest difference between Stormblood and well, the main difference between Stormblood and Shadowbringers Abyssal Drain is that they moved Abyssal Drain from being a GCD to an
To an
OGCD.
OGCD.
And because of
Yep.
that, they could kind of that's how they nerfed it essentially. Is that you can only press it once because Dark Knights were literally like if you didn't have to pop any cooldowns. It was literally just immortal as long as you had the enemies to sustain the draining of your HP. It
Mhm.
was absolutely nuts.
Um, Salted Earth.
Hmm.
I have mixed feelings on it. On the one hand, I'm glad that like
Macros are not required.
that macros are not required. I
Hmm.
can see where people would actually be upset about it no longer being ground targeted though, because like as a controller player, that's the one place where controllers are clearly disadvantaged compared to mouse and keyboard is placing ground targeted AoEs.
Hmm.
Yep.
Um,
I think all three
and
of
so
us are
as a
controllers.
as a controller player, that's a positive change for me. But I
Hmm.
can see how with a mouse and keyboard player, they would actually prefer it ground targeted because you could do things, especially in dungeons, you could do things like, I know I'm going to end up here, so I'm going to place the salted earth there as I'm running. Right. And you miss like one tick, but whatever, the salted earth is already there when you get there and you stop. Right. And so you could do stuff like that. And so I mean I can kind of see, or like if you're away from the boss for whatever reason, but which, these days is very rare unless you screw something up or you're just playing safer than you need to, or you're inexperienced or whatever, right? But if you are forced away from the boss and salted earth comes up, then you can throw the salted earth down, right? But I mean, those are pretty niche things. Um, Salt and darkness, I don't know. Like on the one hand, I'm, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about salt and darkness. Like I'm really not sure because it's like
I
it's
want.
another it's another OGCD in a very cluttered job. Like
Yeah.
or very cluttered opener at least because Dark Knight opener is so cluttered. There's so much to do in the opener. It's so busy, and Salt and Darkness just makes it even busier.
Hmm.
On the other hand, it is kind of nice now that you know, you can burst for that extra damage. Like, that if like you can burst for that extra damage, like if Salted Earth is like if the boss is gonna move out of it or something, right? Because you lose potency from the salted earth itself, but because salt and darkness is actually like twice as strong as the entire potency of salted earth, it's probably gonna be better to just place the salted earth on cooldown and then blow it up with salt and darkness, even if the boss moves out of it, because you can like keep the cooldown rolling, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I guess that's positive, but on the other hand, it's just kind of like yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of apathetic toward that one.
I
Yeah.
mean, if the concern is that, man, this job is so busy, wouldn't it be better to just say, all right, at the end of Salted Earth's duration, it triggers it unless you pop it manually, kind of an idea?
If you're gonna do that, I think it'd be better to say like the initial tick hits for like 500 potency, and
Yeah.
then it ticks for like 50 potency, a tick for 15 seconds or something like that.
Give it the Dia treatment.
Yeah.
Okay, I could see that.
Um, Shadowbringer. what the fuck's the point of Shadowbringer? It's a flood of darkness that doesn't cost mana. Okay, I whatever. Like you're giving me more GCDs square. Why? Why are you giving me more GCDs in my Dark Knight opener? Or OGCDs, sorry. Why are you giving
No
me
worries.
more OGCDs in my Dark Knight opener? Like, ugh. Um,
Dark Knights genuinely are not going to be able to hit Shirk.
yeah. Carve in their opener anyway.
Opener, yeah.
Bit. Okay, so there is a positive change in Delirium charges. That's good. We've already talked about it on Warrior. It's the same here. It's a good change. Um,
Timing too. Same as Warrior, but
yeah, yeah.
good to mention.
Fucking blood weapon. Fucking blood weapon. What the fuck? They give delirium charges and they don't give blood weapon charges. Why? Why? Square. Why? Tell me right now why. Like why does blood weapon not have charges? And not only that, but I don't know if y'all know this, kind of a little bit of trivia here. So most buffs that say last X seconds, they actually last X.9 seconds. So like if a buff says it lasts for 10 seconds, it actually lasts for 10.9 seconds.
To give you wiggle
Okay.
room involving Cervatix, I'm assuming.
Lead weapon lasts for 10.0 seconds.
Wow.
So
How
blood weapon is 0.9 seconds slower, or sorry, 0.9 seconds shorter than like other similar skills, which makes it harder for you to get all 5 of your GCDs inside of blood weapon. That's why Dark Knights go so fast with their GCD. That's why
because
you
they have
see
no
Dark Knight.
choice.
They have to. That's why you see Dark Knight builds that are at like 2.37 and shit like that. Whereas like even warriors are at like 2.4. You know, it's because they have to because of blood weapon, and it's dumb. It was dumb in Shadowbringers, and it's even fucking dumber in Endwalker when they're putting delirium and inner release on a charge system.
Something that feels more like an oversight than anything.
And I mean,
And
full disclaimer, like things can still change.
yeah, no, they can.
Like I
This
think
is very
even
true.
Yoshi P has also even stated on a couple of streams I think previously that like even after the media tour, like they've already adjusted a few things, but just haven't said anything about it yet.
And so hopefully that is one of the things that they've adjusted.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've given um hopefully they've given uh Gunbreaker like an extra 5 seconds on No Mercy,
Yeah.
you know. Um but yeah, Blood Weapon is kind of a sore spot as of right now. If it changes, it won't be a sore spot anymore. Um
And then everything will be fine.
Everything will not be fine. Um let's see. On mend, the on mend trait. What the fuck? Who was smoking what when they put that in there? Right? That is that is worse than the fucking warrior ability at the start of Stormblood that got changed into Shake. Oh god, I don't even remember what the ability was. Shit, what was that? What was that skill?
I'm sure Nox would know if he's in chat right
It
now.
was like I think it was literally like you're immune to heavies and like pushbacks and shit like that. Like that was like their level 68 ability. And it was awful and terrible and people hated it. And in like the first major patch, they took it away and replaced it with Shake It Off. And like enhanced on mend is that level of terrible. Like you don't want to use on mend. And even if you do use on mend, so you get 5 extra seconds off your plunge cooldown, whoop-de fucking do, right? Like what the actual fuck?
Yeah. I feel like that would kind of
Um,
fuck with the timings just a little bit, unless they actually like have fights where you're literally just forced to
the timings don't
disengage.
really like not even from a timing perspective, but just from a okay, so like even if that gets you an extra plunge, right? Plunge is not a lot of potency. like that is such a piss poor trait as far as like DPS gain.
Yeah,
Um, and
it's
it's
level
just
84 too. Feels so bad.
yeah, it's so fucking bad, and
Like,
that's like
Hmm?
like oh my god, there's literally nothing good you can say about that. Like there's no you're
I mean, the only time I would think that it's actually somewhat useful would be in
no,
dungeon runs.
you're wrong.
Only time.
You're
Only
wrong.
time.
You're wrong. It's still not useful. You're wrong.
When are you
Like,
spamming unmend in a dungeon run?
To pull them in. I don't know. To
but
to pull an
even
enemy
then,
in
you
and then
don't.
AOE.
But even then, you don't care about the 5 seconds off plunge.
Yeah, like, did you make sure that both charges of plunge were on cooldown before you got to the next boss?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh yeah, every time. It's the number one thing I'm thinking about.
It's the only thing I think of whenever I play Dark Knight because Dark Knight's signature ability is unmend and plunge.
Plunge. It's the first thing I do when I
That's
wake
the
up.
first-
It's the
yeah.
last thing I do before I go to bed is plunge.
Plunge and unmend. Oh, by the way, unmend fucking sucks in Shadowbringers too. Just so you know, it has the slowest fucking missile speed of all the tanks.
It's a spell.
Which is why no one ever wants to pull as a Dark Knight as a main tank. Fuck that
The
shit.
ultimate off tank. I've been saying it the whole time.
Speaking of which, speaking of spells, why are Unleash and Stalwart Soul and Unmend? Why are all of them still spells? Why?
Yeah.
So that you can meld spell speed.
Oh my god. Spell speed and skill speed need to be one stat.
That's speed.
That's
Yeah,
just a
You call it
drug.
whatever the fuck you want. Like speed, haste,
Alacrity.
alacrity,
Haste.
quickness. I don't give a fuck what you call it. They
Haste.
need to be the same stat. There's no reason.
Yeah.
This is 2021. There's no reason for them to not be the same stat.
This is 2021. Stop filling my inventory with materia I don't use.
Just play everything, forehead.
Fuck
See,
you.
I'm getting like that. I'm standing in that salted earth right now. I'm getting salty. Um, let's see. Okay, so I bitched about that.
Ray's getting a lot of upgrades.
Blackest
We're
Night?
all excited about that.
What is?
Ray,
Ray?
you're
What?
your doppelganger.
Living Shadow.
Oh. Why? Why does that have to be a trait? Like, why? I look at the Dark Knight stuff.
It's a
and
trait
it
twice.
seems so pointless. Like, why? Why do they have to have a level 90 trait that's like, oh yeah, it's upgraded to Shadowbringer now, and it's like, shouldn't that just be like automatic? Like, why do you
No.
need a trait for that?
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see.
Similarly,
The only
why do you need a
take-
trait for the 88 to make them slightly more powerful? You'd think you just tie that into their 85 thing.
Yeah, I know, right? Blackest Night. It's a really strong and yet I think kind of overrated ability. It's kind of weird because I feel like it is the strongest out of the 4 mitigations right now in Shadowbringers. I feel like it's the strongest out of the 4, and yet like the 4 short cooldown mitts, and yet
Mhm.
despite that, I also feel like it's really overrated. Like people talk about TBN like it's God's gift to this green earth, and it's just a strong mitigation skill. Like, okay, guys, calm down a little bit.
It's the only thing that makes fucking Dark Knight feel like a tank.
It's the only
know,
thing
right?
they have going for themselves, man. Don't take that away.
That's true.
Please don't take
That's
such away. They have to talk about it this way.
yeah, they're smoking that copium. That's how they.
The
Yeah.
blackest copium.
That uncut, raw and uncut.
There you
Um,
go.
But yeah, they're the only tank that didn't get a buff to their short cooldown mitt, and I think that because all of the other tanks got both extra mitigation and healing. Okay.
Mhm.
Here's my thing with TBN is I can kind of understand why Oblation is its own ability because that's kind of like the extra mitigation that the other skills got, but it's purposely separate from TBN so that you don't accidentally fuck up your TBN and not break it. But that in and of itself speaks to a design problem with TBN. Like, why do you have to break it, right? Like, why can't you say, um, you gain mana back? Like, you gain at the very least you gain mana back based on the amount of the shield that's destroyed, so that you at least get a partial refund, even if it doesn't break. Okay, so one, you could do something like that. Two, you could say like, ooh, excuse me, like, um, it takes 3,000 mana and automatically gives you a stack and gives you a free usage of the other skill. Um,
So, in your
you
opinion, making sure that your TBN breaks is not something that you view as skill expression for a Dark Knight.
No, it's not because
There are too many other factors that go into it.
and it's like the one ability where, like, as you get further into a tier, you can be like, okay, I'm going to not use this mitigation skill because I don't take enough damage and it won't break. And that's just fucking dumb. Like, that should be when you really want to use TBN, because it's like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm taking 0 fucking damage from this tank buster. Fuck you, boss. And instead, you're like, I don't want to use TBN because I won't get my mana back from it. And that's just dumb. That's just dumb. And I'm sure that better Dark Knight players than me can come up with better ways for TBN to work. But there are definitely ways, because the shield part of it is fantastic, right? Or even just don't even make it cost mana. Make it fucking free, right?
I was gonna
Make
say
it free. Make it free and give it a 25-second cooldown, just like all the other tank abilities have.
I was gonna say,
Um,
would you think that it'd be better if like breaking the shield instead instead of making like Edge or Flood like free, like actually buffed it, like free slash buffed, or something like that, just to make it feel
you mean like buff the damage of your next Edge of Shadow?
yeah,
Is that what
or
you're
something
saying?
like that, like 2.5 times the potency or something like that.
Turn it
That'd be
into
a lot.
Shadowbringer.
No, I don't actually.
Mhm.
I don't think that would be a positive change, because then you'd be looking for ways to purposely break it every 15 seconds, and I think that could cause some negative gameplay. I mean,
Okay.
imagine if you have tanks that are like, I'm gonna stand in this AoE that gives a vuln so I can pop my Blackest Night, and then I'm gonna do it like 7 more times in 50 seconds.
Or a
Healer's
healer,
Chest.
Right.
or a healer that like needs to heal every 20 seconds in order to be able to get back MP. Oh wait, shit.
Stop your bitching. You're to be a Gundam. I'm not going to hear this from you. Not tonight.
Okay, two points.
Yeah, yeah.
One, just because that's bad doesn't mean that TBN also has to be bad. And two, this is tank talk, not healer talk. Get the fuck out of here with your scholar tears. This is Dark Knight tier time.
It was actually Sage Tears, but you know.
Oh, I don't know the healers. I assumed you meant scholar because of energy drain. And like,
Oh.
if you average it out, it's 1 energy drain every 20 seconds.
No, he's
it-
talking about
no.
Sage, and they're not even tears. They're just sweat. He's trying to make them look
Gotcha.
like tears. Build
Anyway.
piety, you jackass.
Sages
Anyway,
are gonna
yeah,
love
no,
Dark
so
Knight. I'm just
TBN
saying.
So TBN, I think TBN, like, make it free,
Mhm.
25-second cooldown to match the other tank abilities. You get a barrier for 25% of your maximum HP that lasts for 8 seconds. For the first 4 seconds, you take 10 to 15% less damage. That way, it matches the other skills. Get rid of Oblation, do something else with it.
Yeah, it's so fucking boring.
Make it a hot. Whoa.
So now, there's one thing left to talk about.
Yep, I figured you were saving it on purpose.
Living Dead. Alright, so Living Dead has always been a janky ass piece of shit. If you don't have a white mage, it feels awful. That's not gonna change.
Just
Yeah,
There's even
Astros
more
can do with it
healers
now.
But they don't. But you see, how many EDs do you have to use on it though?
I would strive to use a properly executed macro, Cosmos, as opposed to ED. But I do get your point.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. Okay.
And then
Um.
and then yeah,
Well, but Macrocosmos, I
it only
thought
hits you
it.
up to 50%, and then
Yeah.
ED for the rest.
It
Oh no,
depends
you
on
would
the
You
type
eat.
of
you ED
buster.
You would
first. You'd
ED
ED
first and
first,
then
and
macro
then
afterwards. Yeah.
Macrocosmos. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And again,
Um.
it depends on the type of buster. Like if you think about E10, Macrocosmos
And
is all you would need.
you'd also have to potentially be using an AoE ability for just a single person.
If that's all you can use it on for 2 minutes, it's fine.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not the only thing you can use
Oh
it
no,
on for 2 minutes.
sometimes Living
So
Dead
my
does
point
manage
is,
to irritate.
Living Dead is a piece of shit. All right, I
Yes.
don't think there's any arguing that
Nope.
point. Um,
You can argue around it, but I mean, shit is still shit. So.
the only good thing about it is that it has a little bit of flexibility because in very, very, very niche situations, you can use it on two tank busters that are actually closer together than 5 minutes. Um, because and like Sai did this in E3, where he would I think it was the first and third buster where he would, or maybe the second and fourth, I don't remember, where he would Living Dead the first one, and he would actually pop Living Dead like 8 seconds before the buster hit. Um, and then like, or like nine, like even like 9 seconds or something like that, and like the buster would hit and like kill him, and then in quotes, and then like hit again, right? And so then like, but that's not even like a positive, really. Like it's not because you can do the same thing with home game, right? Except easier because home game's a minute shorter cooldown. So even that isn't really an advantage, and that's one of the things that people point to of like, oh, like you get the flexibility with the. No, you don't. You don't get flexibility with Living Dead. It's still 10 seconds of immunity. It's not 20 seconds because you become immune to death when Living Dead procs and you go into Walking Dead status, right? So if you're hitting any other and literally any other home game in Endwalker because they're all 10 seconds, if you're hitting any other uh invuln right before the fatal damage, you have 10 seconds of invuln. You have 10 seconds of invuln with Living Dead. Literally the only difference is if like the two sources of damage are like 9.9 seconds apart, and so Living Dead can catch them both, but another ability can't because of like the aftercast delay,
Mhm.
right? That's literally fucking it. And so it's not a 20-second invuln. People who say it is don't know how numbers work.
Or just didn't
Um
read the tooltip.
or just didn't read the
Even if it
tooltip.
was this, I'm not.
Um
That's not even big enough to call it a minor optimization. What you're talking about does not even begin to offset the amount
no,
of
no,
pain
no,
and
I
suffering.
agree. I 100% agree with you. And that's where I'm going next.
Uh,
Okay. So the base at the very core level, an invuln that says, okay, you're zombie mode and now you have to be healed to survive, isn't necessarily terrible. And it kind of fits with Dark Knight, I think. All right. So, how do we keep Living Dead needing to you be healed, but it doesn't feel like shit? All right. Well, there's one of the obvious ways is when they're in Walking Dead, they receive a healing bonus, right? So it's easier to heal them up to full, and like a significant healing bonus, right? Like 50% extra healing or something like that. That's one way. Another way is, have y'all noticed that they are now the only tank without massive amounts of healing?
Yep.
The
yeah,
one tank that requires healing for their invuln to function is the one tank with almost zero healing.
Abyssal Drain is
Because
not going to cut it.
Soul Eater and Abyssal Drain do not fucking count.
nope.
That is that is like 10% of your health bar, if that, if they like crit, right? So give fucking Blackest Night a regen effect, or better yet, here you go. Here's what you do: Blackest Night, all right. Create a barrier that absorbs. All right, so all of the other short cooldown mitigations in Endwalker, it's going to be X% of mitigation plus X additional percent of mitigation for 4 seconds plus some sort of healing effect. Okay, so here's what you do with TBN to make it on par. No cost, 25-second cooldown. 8-second duration, 35 to 40%, whatever they feel is balanced, or 30 to 40%, somewhere in there, of your HP as a shield. For the first 4 seconds, you have 10 to 15% damage mitigation. And um any and any healing or any shield that is left over when the ability ends is applied to you as healing, and then make Living Dead the same as Super Bolide. So when you hit 1 health, you actually become invuln. So then you can hit Living Dead. Living Dead procs, you TBN, and in 8 seconds you heal back up for 30 to 40% of your max health. That gets you a large chunk of the way there. Then also make it so that when you are in Walking Dead, you have
Let's say 20%.
well,
20%
no,
healing something.
you'd want to make it at least 30% because it's currently 25. All right. Then when you're in Living Dead, you give the Dark Knight, or when you're in Walking Dead, you give the Dark Knight a bloodbath effect.
Mm.
So the Dark Knight can now take care of, like, somewhere, depending on exactly where the numbers fall, can now take care of between 50 and 80% of their total health pool by themselves. They just need to be topped off and they're golden. And suddenly Living Dead is a perfectly fine invuln.
I was about to say it very much sounds like your perfect plan to fix Dark Knight's invuln is by giving them the second best one in the game. But no, at the very least I think what you're describing manages to keep 2 boxes ticked, which is it still very much keeps the whole become a zombie thing that's so important to their aesthetic. But the other big thing about Living Dead has always been it is the only invuln that creates a mechanic where none existed. The only pain in the ass was it was a mechanic created for your healers. You hit the button and then someone else had to clean up your mess.
Yep.
Yep.
If
And
you
the
keep
thing
that
is,
concept, but now it's the Dark Knight's responsibility, I can get behind that.
Yep.
and if it's a blood, if it's a life leech effect, right? Like, so it, like, the potency that you heal actually scales with the damage that you do, then higher skilled Dark Knights can heal themselves for more by purposely pooling resources in preparation for Living Dead and require less babysitting from the healers.
Like make Dark Knight the actual drain tank that it was supposed to be.
At least under Living Dead, yeah.
Yeah.
Um so yeah.
But none of these things happened, and instead we
right?
live in the
Well,
world
we don't
live
know yet.
in.
I know, right?
We don't know yet.
True, that's
I mean,
true, that's true.
I doubt they're gonna, like I could see them putting charges on Blood Weapon. I don't see them reworking Living Dead. I think if they were going to rework Living Dead, they would have already done it because it would be such a large change. Like charges on Blood Weapon isn't that big of a change. Living Dead has been the same since Heaven's Word, and they've never changed it. So
You're right.
I don't see them changing Living Dead, even though they should.
I mean,
Um,
one can dream. They changed Summoner.
yeah, this is true. And new
And
Summoner
Monk.
looks dope as fuck.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like, there and like that's just one idea, right? Like there's oh, and then also invulns in general. Now that everything is 10 seconds, I feel like I feel like they made like the duration change to invuln without really thinking about like the repercussions of that fully, because now it's like home gain is just like even better, right?
Yeah.
And like Super Bolide and Hollowed are like yeah, I personally think that what they should do is, revamp Living Dead, right? And it stays, so home gain stays 4 minutes. Revamp Living Dead, it stays 5 minutes. Super Bolide is also 5 minutes instead of 6, and Hollowed is 6 minutes instead of 7. Because
And
then you
design your fights accordingly.
Yeah.
yeah, and then you still have a little bit of spread in, like, how often the invulns become available based on the job, right? But it's like, so Warrior has, and they're all the same duration. Warrior's the shortest cooldown, but they're also the only one that can still take damage after their invuln has been triggered, right? So that's kind of the trade-off for it being the shortest cooldown. And then in the middle, you have Dark Knights and Gunbreakers with, we drop to 1 health, but once we're at 1 health, we're immune, so any healing that we get sticks to us until the invuln is done. And then at the end, on the far end, you have Paladin, which is I have the longest cooldown on my invuln, but I take literally 0 damage from anything. I do not give a fuck, right? And I
Yeah, I
feel
don't
like
get
that would,
damage down stacks. I don't get
yeah,
vulns.
I feel like that would balance the invulns a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, and then looking at Delirium, Unleash and Stalwart Soul need to be weapon skills so that they can um so that you can get mana off of Delirium with them in AoE, because right now you can't. Delirium is useless in AoE because it only procs off weapon skills.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize that.
Or not
You're
Delirium,
absolutely
I'm
right.
sorry. Blood Weapon. Oh no,
Mm.
Blood Weapon is weapon skills and spells. I take it back. I'm sorry. I was getting wires crossed. Forget everything I said in the past 30 to 45 seconds.
No worries. It's only going to
Delirium
be in
is weapon
video.
skills. It's just that you are only going to be hitting certain buttons under Delirium.
Yeah. Um yeah, it's you get MP back when you hit with Quietus or Blood Spiller. My brain was doing I don't know what. Um but yeah, Unleash and Stalwart Soul. And same for Paladin too. That's why I want speed to be 1 stat, because then you don't have those 2.5-second GCDs on Paladin even when you have a 2.4 GCD. That's just dumb. And it's even dumber now that we have 8 spells a minute in our Paladin rotation.
And so many of them involve swords to begin with.
Yeah.
Unlimited
Half of
blade
them.
works.
So, I don't know. I feel like I've talked a lot because Sai didn't show up.
You can beat him up for it later, don't worry.
People are probably tired of my voice.
I have
I'll,
that same fear, but you got to remember that your voice is so much more soothing than mine.
all 4 of your viewers.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I mean, to just kind of wrap it up, because I know you were doing little bits of mini wish lists and stuff here, and more than a mini wish list for Dark Knight, but
Big wish list.
yeah,
Mega wish list.
but
It's like when you unroll the parchment and it rolls out the floor and down the hall and it's out the front door and down the street. That's what Dark Knight wish list is like right now.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they weren't good boys, so they get coal.
yeah. I mean, I guess to kind of go back into, I mean, to kind of rein it into to kind of, talk about all tanking as a role again. Do you think that tanks are in a good spot or a bad spot or something like that for going into Endwalker?
As much as I spent the last 2-ish hours bitching, I really enjoy tanking. I don't see that changing in Endwalker. And I mean, yeah, tanks are going to be really strong in Endwalker because most of the things that I bitched about, with the exception of Dark Knight, almost everything that I bitched about was damage related. And so when it comes to the core job of tanking, which is keeping aggro and staying alive, the tanks have only gotten better. Even Dark Knight, which got better by the least amount and has a ton of problems, got better because, what's its nuts? Oblation. Oblation is not a great ability, but it's still 10% extra mitigation, right? So even Dark Knight is improving mitigation wise, and so yeah, I see I see tanks as being really strong in Endwalker, and if they don't seriously ramp up the tank damage, it might actually get like
You
I
did
might
for it.
have to play Dark Knight or Gunbreaker just to feel challenged. Right? Right? Because like if I don't have like weaker mitigations and like a shitty invuln on the Dark Knight, or if I don't have like the continuation to make me curse, I might get bored if I'm, just like living through everything because they don't really ramp the damage up enough. I
Yeah.
don't know,
Both
we'll
your
see.
healer, both your healers are just furiously nodding their heads, like, "No, please. We both of us are sitting on half our kit.
Yeah, pretty
Fucking
much.
killer's gonna be out of MP if he doesn't get to heal you more
Well,
often."
yeah, I mean, and to kind of grow this into a greater discussion, right? Like, in terms of encounters, like things. Obviously, you want to try and make full use of your kit, right? But so, like, what would you like to see out of encounters that force you to use more of your kit to like give you more of a challenge? Like,
I mean,
possibly on like Dark Knight Gunbreaker, but also just like through your bread and butter like Paladin and stuff.
okay, so first of all, when you talk about using more of the kit, you're pretty much talking about defensives because all of the tanks do use their full kit damage-wise. It doesn't
Hmm.
always feel satisfying, but they use it. Um, but because if you don't, you're doing less damage than you could be.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as damage, like defensives, I think. I mean, I already use my kit, like my defensive kit, a lot. Like I look for reasons to keep my defensive abilities off cooldown, even if it doesn't necessarily matter all that much. But probably the thing that they could do the most to make you feel more, I guess, threatened would be bigger autos and or more frequent autos because with the tank busters, like they'll never make tank busters that hit so hard that you just can't live through them with proper mitigation because then that defeats the whole purpose of having mitigation, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um so I think the only other thing that you can do there is actually make autos threatening and make it more of a choice. Because the other thing too is with how it works a lot of the time is you have this situation where it's like, okay, I'm gonna invuln this buster and then use every cooldown I have on this second buster, and then my co-tank is gonna like invuln this buster and then use every cooldown he has on this other buster, and then it comes back to stuff like that, right?
Uh,
Because
mhm.
outside of the busters, there's nothing that really threatens you. Um,
What I think our tanks would do back when we had a full static was like we would have like a main tank, and then anytime there'd be a tank buster, they just swap so that the off tank would have like cooldowns to pop for the busters
yeah,
exclusively, and then just
yeah,
give it
that's
back.
and yeah, or like something like that too, where the point is that like you're basically able to cover every tank buster with either an invuln or like three different cooldowns at once, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the two things that they could do would be to A, make autos more threatening, either they hit harder or they happen faster, so that you're incentivized to like use Rampart for strings of autos,
Hmm.
right? And so that takes away a mitigation tool from the busters, or transition to a model where there are weaker but much more frequent busters so that you can't just throw all of your cooldowns at one buster and then invul the next buster.
I feel like they used to have. Oh, it was like it was. I think it was a tier that you didn't play. Did you play the final tier of Omega, right?
I did not. That was
Okay.
'09 through 12 was when real life came and tore my intestines out through my throat, and I
Gotcha.
I was not playing like any video games for like half a year.
Gotcha. Yeah, cause like O10 S Midgard Zormer did exactly that. Um, to the point where it got really frustrating because um, I literally at one point. Okay, so to kind of put it in context, Midgard Zormer essentially gives both of your tanks debuffs um, so that if you get attacked in a certain kind of context with a specific debuff, you would just get doomed and die instantly. And so it forced both tanks to kind of dance around who had to be the main tank, and it was never the same every time. But tank busters, especially towards the end of the fight, ended up becoming so frequent that my co-tank, who was a warrior, had to literally be covered, and I would have to use my cooldowns while a specific debuff was up, so that like I couldn't take the autos, but I could still eat the tank buster for him. And so like I do think that stuff like that is it is healthy. I think that maybe just the way that we kind of handle the cooldowns and tank busters and stuff like made it so that it was required of me to do that in context with our group. But like I do think that more stuff like that would definitely. I think it's viable, and more than viable, it's like it could be a standard that I hope comes up for Endwalker as well.
And things like the no cast bar buster, where it's like not so much a buster as like a really hard auto.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like stuff like that potentially too. Plus, it would just be funny, like when you're progging and you don't know it's there yet, and like all of a sudden he just swipes at you for like 80% of your health, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, they had that in a couple of dungeons, I think. Like, I think it was Academia.
They
right?
actually tend to have mechs like that more in dungeons than in raids, but they're not like super threatening. It's like you can take them without cooldowns if you don't know they're happening, like unless your healer is playing limbo with your health, right? Like like if you're sitting at 30%, it's gonna kill you, but if you're sitting at like 80%, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know? And I honestly, I feel like that's like from the dungeon perspective, I feel like they put it in more as like a healer mechanic than a tank mechanic. Like make sure you keep your tank kind of topped up, right?
Yeah.
Because you never know when he's gonna get hit for half his health bar.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that like you can't really get into like utilizing full tank kits without like eventually bringing up the fact that like now DPS also have mitigation and healers have more tools than ever to heal you with, and so like it becomes more of like a what is this going to do to force us to like.
With that being said, the DPS mitigation is mostly used for AoE effects, and AoE effects don't threaten tanks anyway because we have so much more health and defense than anyone else.
It'd be
Like
interesting.
I can take an AoE attack with no cooldowns up and still only take like half the damage of everyone else in the group.
And so that kind of brings in my kind of healer fantasy of like a raid way that doesn't do much initial damage but gives you a nasty dot, so that those like
Burnished Glory.
Yeah.
Like, honey, that wasn't a dream. We actually did do E11.
Yeah. Oop, do we have any mods in chat, by the way?
I suppose I could be.
Okay, never mind. I got it.
Okay.
You don't want to buy followers and viewers on bigfollows.com?
I want to ban people that ask me about that.
Like Aemide and myself?
No, I just want that in my messages, personally, in my chat. But no, it's just like, you know, I want burnished glories in such a way that, you know, it makes it so that it frees up those cooldowns to be able to use for like more tank busters more often.
You want,
you know, almost like ultimate level shit. You know,
you want terminal relativity.
I do. This is gonna come up in the Shadowbringers retrospective, and I'm gonna constantly bring it up every chance I get. But I just don't feel like I healed enough, in enough encounters. Like it just felt like the heal checks were a little too generous for too long. You know, I don't want to have to be forced to use my entire kit the first floor of any tier. You know, and I think that you know the learning curve especially like was okay, especially for the first year. But like, I want to have to heal more often, and that kind of goes hand in hand with like, you know, making the tanks have to mitigate them for themselves some more, making the healer, like making the DPS and stuff like use their defensive cooldowns for the raid, or you know, if encounters are put in such a way that like it makes those next to useless for like raid wides, instead putting them out towards tank busters instead. Obviously not making it to the point where it's required, but like making it so that there's a lot more discussion about like active mitigations and active like optimizations to be able to progress through a raid. And
I will say, like, I do enjoy having like getting to a point where you're talking about like, okay, who's using like you're talking about mitigation rotations.
yeah,
Um, like E2S, E11S, E12S, with term this phase two, right? Where it's
yeah,
like, okay, there's going to be a lot of damage here spread out over a somewhat lengthy period of time. How are we going to handle this?
yeah,
Like, I actually enjoy that mitigation mapping.
yeah. And I want there to be more of that in Endwalker. And that goes hand in hand, like I said, with everybody else too. Like ranged fizz having to mitigate, having to pop their mitigations for like, raid wides and stuff, but also getting like feints and addles put towards like potentially instead of putting them up to towards raid wides, like, there are a lot more tank busters, more so than like, any one tank can just quote unquote like main tank forever.
Yep.
Because to me that's just the most boring shit. I hate being able. I like it's fine to be able to do that. I just feel like it's dirty most of the time. Like
I would like to see a world where you see tank swaps become a regular thing, not because a mechanic demands it, or because a buster's coming up and it's not my turn to invuln. Like, no, we swap here because I'm dry of
Yeah.
mitigations and I
Yeah.
cannot keep up my responsibilities anymore. It's your
Yep.
turn.
exactly.
And I don't think that's ever been the case in any Savage fight I've been in.
Well, I mean, like I said, O10S, but that's before your time.
That is before me.
O10S, I just like I keep talking about it. I have PTSD off that shit because like, holy fuck, that was a bitch and a half to do. But but then I also kind of think about it being like that was kind of through the circumstances of my party more so than the circumstances of like the fight demanding it in any sort of way. Though I mean, like RNG could have still fucked you in fights like that. So it's not it's not as if Omega was the be all end all of like, oh, this is a perfect rating tier or anything like that.
It had the best music.
Yeah, I like chicken tenders as much as the next guy, but like, you can only crater my panties so many times.
What?
That was a mechanic in a O11S Pantacrator.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, it's an inside joke that no one here is no one on stream is watching to understand. Feels bad.
He's doing that dyslexia of the brain thing again.
It's
Am
my
I?
thing.
No, yours is dyslexia of the mouth.
Is
Same
it?
thing.
Is it?
I just fuck with people, like that's my thing. But yeah, I mean I just want there to be a more cohesive, like more organic discussion instead of like forcing it to just be like, healers are bored, so all they do is just talk about the mapping and then it's done. Now I want everyone to be more actively involved in it, make it slightly more required, especially as tiers progress.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone has tools for something. Everyone has to have a tool for something.
Even the most selfish DPS have tools that a healer / tank can care about talking to them about.
Exactly. Like you can't you can't like you can't
I mean,
tell me
how
that
many
now
times
that-
did we talk about like, oh, Osa can't be in for this heal, but he has
like,
Man of War.
even if your party has 4 melee DPSers in your savage
God.
progging party, like God forbid, God forbid that fucking happens, right? Like if everyone has to be a melee DPS, that is 4 fucking feints just sitting there waiting
And
to be
faint,
used.
faint now does
Yeah.
all damage, so
Exactly. So like it, if everyone has the ability to mitigate something, make it so that everyone has some sort of mitigation that they can bring up in a discussion about optimization and damage management. Like that could I want that for everybody going into Endwalker raids.
Paint can now be used on everything. Proceeds
Yes,
to not be used on anything. Oh
exactly.
no.
You know, and
Like,
yeah.
doubling the potency of all of our healing GCDs, that we never hit them. Oh
Mhm.
no.
Mhm. Like that's my worst. That's the worst possible timeline to happen, and I don't want that.
You don't have a choice. You have to heal, as we keep saying, because I still find it really funny.
Yeah, I mean I don't mind. It means that all of my overheal is your fault. So
Yep.
I mean it has been for the last 2 tiers
Not
basically.
all of it. Sometimes it's Earthly Star.
I mean now, but like, you know, not that I care too much. It's a thing
Brings
we'll
it up.
work on
That
together.
sounds like someone who doesn't care would say.
Speaks up constantly, especially when we're in front of guests.
Yeah. But anyways, is there anything else we wanted to bring up?
Uh, no, you guys actually hit on the couple of questions I wanted to talk about at the end here.
Hmm?
So
Gotcha.
as far as that's concerned,
Ah, okay. And your
Rip
most,
Dark Knight.
yeah, and your most, I already asked you previously, but you're pretty much 100% guaranteed to be Paladin, going through MSQ and
Hmm.
pretty much everything going into
I mean, it's
Endwalker, right?
it's
So,
it's my aesthetic. It's my thing in
yeah,
like every game, even games that don't technically have paladins. I try to find
the
ways
sword and
to
board.
play a paladin.
Yeah,
Like I was a warrior monk in Guild Wars. I was a guardian in Guild Wars 2. I was a Templar in like Dragon Age. Like
yeah,
it's just kind of my thing.
yeah.
So yeah,
I also really like Paladin.
like I
Yeah,
do want to be a little more diverse this in Endwalker than I was in Shadowbringers and get like more time on the other tanks. But yeah, Paladin's gonna be my main boy.
yeah, and that is awesome.
He's everyone's main boy in Endwalker.
This is true.
Hmm.
Paladin gear looks fucking sick.
It does.
Which kind of sucks because I just got my glams all sorted out and now I have to like figure out which one. Like, yeah.
Would you really have been happy going into Endwalker and being like, oh man, all the tank glams still look the same as they did at 80?
I would have been okay with that actually because I'm really happy with all my glams currently.
You're
Yeah,
currently happy with them, but eventually the thirst will come again. You'll start
thirst.
the thirst. Just start raving about how you need a new fit.
I don't think so.
Your drip isn't as drippy as you remembered it being when you went to bed last night.
My drip has never been drippy. I don't have drip.
But your character does.
So thank you for coming on the show
You're welcome.
Yeah.
with your drippy paladin.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess I'll just kind of hold on. Let me just finish this turn in real quick because I decided to get back on 14 since we were finished looking at tooltips. Um, yeah. I guess I'll just wrap up the YouTube segment of this as well. Um, but yeah, if you're still here on Twitch, I appreciate you tuning in and staying for a while to kind of watch as we talked all about tanks and stuff going into Endwalker. As you can tell by all of us, bitching about tanks and stuff, it's only because we care. It's because we love the job. We love the aesthetic of it, and we just want what's best for all of the tanks. We wouldn't be so mad at Dark Knight if everything else was, just as bad or at around the same level. So we just want better for it.
What a weird way to phrase it. We wouldn't care if it sucked if everything sucked.
I mean, I'm
Make
not wrong
everything
though.
terrible, swear. Do it now.
Fucking
Make
bet.
everything terrible.
Fucking bet. But
We don't
yeah,
want to single you out. You just suck more than you're supposed to.
yeah. But yeah, and then if you're watching on YouTube, I really appreciate you watching up until this point. If you really enjoyed stuff like this, feel free to drop a like, comment, or subscribe if you want to see more of this.
If you're
And
still watching on YouTube, what the fuck are you doing with your life?
I mean, like the most viewed video on my YouTube has like 68 views, and I don't understand why. I do understand why. It's a fucking meme video of just us. It's a clip. It's a clip video of Nox or Soul talking about how Reaper's a magical girl.
Yeah, I've
It's
seen
great.
that one.
It's great. But yeah, I will see all of you in the next video. And yeah, it's actually gonna be tomorrow when we do our caster talks. Heading into Endwalker, and that'll be the end of the series, basically. And we'll just kind of do more talks about, other things in the future. I plan on coming back to all of these topics at one point once the first tier has been completed by everyone, so we can kind of talk about what our expectations were going in and leaving the first tier, like how it turns out, what we're expecting now that we have some Endwalker under our feet and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever it is.
Good night, all.
Mm-hmm.